Good morning, sorry, good afternoon now. Welcome everybody to our 83rd Live Learn Lunch session with the IEP. Today's topic will be delivered by Hanna-Barbera from RNIB. So Heather, I just realised what I've said. Heather, who will be discussing seeing opportunities, accessibility and sight loss. As you can see, the session will be recorded and made available on our YouTube channel, so in about 7 days or so. So for those of you that would like to subscribe, please do so, and you can access our historical sessions, including the historical RNIB ones, and our future sessions through notifications. Your mics and videos are disabled for the course of this session. We do ask that you use the chat function for any questions, which I will be monitoring on the behalf of Heather. So I'm now about to hand over to Heather for her session. So I'll stop sharing my screen and welcome Heather to begin.
Hi there, thank you, Emma. And for anybody who thinks that they're here to hear from Hanna-Barbera, the cartoon expert, I'm sorry to disappoint you, you've just got me. So thanks everyone for coming along today. And as Emma said, this is the one of our the RNIB Seeing Opportunities webinars. This is actually the 8th one that we've delivered with IEP. And today's session is called Are You Creating Barriers for People with Sight Loss? And we'll be looking at accessibility, what that means for people with sight loss. And I'd also like to include some top tips to help people ensure that their materials are accessible for any customers with sight loss. So I'm hoping now I can share my screen. I'll stop my video. Share my screen. Hopefully it will all go to plan. Okay. Yep. So I'm hoping, Emma, can you see my?
Yep. It's all there. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks, Heather. Okay,
that's good. So, so today, everyone, there's going to be some parts where I'll stop sharing this screen and move on to some documents that I'd like to show you, because that will better illustrate what it is that I'm wanting to put across today. So I'll let you know when I'm stopping to share this and to share something else instead. So as I say, welcome to RNIB, Royal National Institute for Blind People, and I plan today to give you some top tips on helping you make sure that the materials that you're sending out to your customers with sight loss are accessible to them. Right. Okay, so to begin with, you probably don't need me to tell you this, but to start with, let's look at what is accessibility. So to many people, accessibility is about accommodating wheelchairs, and that's all there is to providing accessibility. Of course, we know that there's far more to it than that. That might be the view that perhaps architects and that type of design person might look at. But for us, the true meaning of accessibility is about whether a product or service can be used by everyone, however they encounter it or interact with it. So when we initially moved into lockdown, most of us, probably all of us, moved to working remotely. And we were relying on electronic documents for providing information, delivering our training sessions, recording information, etc. So as employability providers, we moved away from the face-to-face support that we'd always given in the past, and we began doing more activities online and delivering things remotely. So I wonder then, did we stop to think about whether the information we were sending out was accessible and, for today's purposes, accessible to people with sight loss? So, of course, we have to think about accessibility, because if the recipient can't read what we're sending out to them, then really it's useless to them, and it would create a lot of frustration and anxiety, and sometimes even mistrust as well. So, as I'm sure we all know, the provision of accessible information is not only a legal requirement under the Equality Act, but it's also about good customer service. And it's a good indication that an organisation is committed to equality. So if we ask ourselves, what makes something accessible? So the layout and formatting of documents is really important to people with sight loss. And if you think about, a lot of websites, the initial thing that you'd see is information on the right-hand side of the screen or page. So, quite often the, the menus and the search function are on the right-hand side. The difficulty with this is that could be easily missed by somebody who's using magnification software or magnification equipment of some sort, because the focus with magnification always starts on the top left of the page, or what we might call it's left aligned. As well as this, if a document isn't formatted correctly, then a screen reader would easily miss out on certain information. And by screen reader, we're talking about systems that input and output things as speech rather than using something visually. So if something's not formatted correctly, a screen reader might not pick up on all the text that's there, and your customer might miss out on some very valuable parts of your document. So the easy answer to this is about using the accessibility checker in Microsoft Office, and using this, which I'm going to show some examples of using this today. And it will help you to easily identify where certain issues might occur. And more importantly, it will tell you how to rectify them as well. So you can find the accessibility checker on the ribbon at the top of your screen. Sometimes it's in the Home tab, depending on the system that you use. If not, it'll be in the Review tab. On our system in RNIB, it's in the Review tab. And I would definitely recommend that you get in the habit of using the accessibility checker for all the documents you produce. It might be an idea when you have a spare 5 minutes to have a go at opening some of the documents you've already produced, and it'll show you how accessible they are, and it'll also show you, what you would need to do to make it accessible if there are issues with it. And I think if you only take one thing from today, it's that your accessibility checker really is your best friend. So I'm going to move on to our next slide, which is where I'll start talking about our top tips and some of the different packages within Microsoft Office. So I'd like to explain to you how to get around some of the main accessibility issues that you'll encounter, and to give you top tips for some of the most commonly used packages, which I have listed on the screen here. So we've got Word, PowerPoint, email, print documents, and websites and apps. If after today's session you'd like some more information about any or all of these things, I would say to contact the RNIB helpline, and they'll be able to help you find what you need. And I'll give you the details for the helpline a little bit later on. So starting off with Microsoft Word, definitely always left aligned things. I know sometimes we like to have things centered because it just looks nice, it's pleasing to the eye. But bearing in mind people who use magnification software, it's so much easier for them to not miss things if things are left aligned. If you don't know what your customer would prefer, it's good advice to use an Arial 14 font. Now, Arial is quite, it's the font that I've got on my screen today on the PowerPoint. It's quite clear. It's not got little curly bits and fancy bits. It's just plain, ordinary, basic text that's much easier to read. Size 14 font, if you don't know someone's preference. So 14 is just that little bit clearer than what we might often see on letters, which tend to come out in size 10 and 12 font, which is really quite small. I would say don't use bold or capitals, excuse me, or italics or underline or different colours as standard. I'm not saying don't use them at all, but if you put these into your standard document, it can just make things that little bit harder to read. It's about creating a good contrast and a good clear print. One crucial point, and we often see this we see it on websites, but also on leaflets and literature that we pick up around the place. Sometimes people will have a picture or an image and there's writing, text over the top of it. That just really makes things much harder to see because you're having, poorer contrast and it's changing the level of contrast you have is changing because of the colours within your picture. So try and avoid putting text on top of images just because it makes it harder to see. Using a good contrast makes things much clearer. So as we have on the screen today, we've got black text on a white background. It pretty much doesn't get any better than that. So, you know, creating a good contrast. You can do different things with colours. Sometimes we have branding guidelines that we need to follow. But, you know, if we're creating things with a good contrast, you know, definitely keeps us on track. So still on the Microsoft Word, just something I wanted to mention was about headings and why these are important. So my headings, what I'll do is I'll load a Word document just now, and hopefully, if all goes well with my screen sharing, that should load up. So if you just give me a moment, I'm just moving from the PowerPoint slide onto something else. Oops. Right, now, hopefully, Emma, has this worked? Am I now on an RNIB document?
Not at the moment. Do you want to just try and share again?
I'll try sharing that again. Okay.
Right, something's happening now. Yeah, there we go. We've got it.
Okay then. So, right. Oopsie daisy. What's happened there? Okay, some of my document has disappeared. I'm going to stop sharing that, and hopefully it'll come back on again. So, because that wasn't meant to happen. I don't know why that has happened at all.
What were we talking about earlier? There we go.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so okay, so this is not happening how it should happen. Some of the text on my document has actually disappeared and it's not coming back, and I don't know why that is.
If you stop sharing and then just go back a stage on the actual document itself, just go back one, so just so that you can revert.
Yeah. So if I close my document, will I be able to open it up again? And
yeah, absolutely.
I'll try that then. I think that's probably my best bet.
Heather and I were discussing just previous to the meeting beginning about the joys of technology not working when you're running a Zoom or a Teams session. And Heather is very much used to the Teams, so getting her on the Zoom is a great new experience for her. So thank you everyone for your patience. And how's it coming on? There we go. Fabulous. Yeah. We can now see it all.
Oh, good stuff. Okay, so I do not know what happened there, but that would have defeated the purpose of what I was trying to show you, because we wouldn't have had the different headings. So, okay, so moving on before this disappears on me again. So here we have a Word document. This is actually, it's an RNIB fact sheet, and it has the parts on it that I would like to show you today. Yeah, so it's quite a long document. I think there's probably about 6 or 7 pages to it, so it fulfills my purpose today, but I'm not going to read it all out to you, don't worry. So let's say that you have a document and we want to send it out to customers. So for this, we would use what we call our styles setting. Some people might be used to using styles. For some, it might be a completely new thing. So styles is actually, it's built into Microsoft Word, and companies generally have their own setups. So they'll have various headings as well as normal text. Now, if we're putting together a document and you want to have, headings, like here we have one heading is access to work, and then there's a subheading that's about this fact sheet. Further down, there's a contents list. Quite often what people will do when they're creating a Word document is, they'll just make it bold and they'll increase or decrease the font so that the headings for each section just stand out that bit clearer. Now, the reason that we would say to use styles is because, several reasons, but firstly, what Styles does is it formats your document so that a screen reader, or a Braille user for that matter, can read this document. So it gives an overview of the document, and it will help somebody to navigate around it. So if you were just simply increasing and decreasing the size of font and making it bold, a screen reader wouldn't see that as being any different. It would just read the whole document out as though it were one big long paragraph. And you know, if I wanted to go to the last section of this document, I'm going to have to listen to my screen reader reading the whole 8 pages out to me, or whatever it is, before I can get to the bit that I want at the end. So obviously that's not ideal. We want to be able to use the different headings if we're using a screen reader, the same as we would if we were just looking at this visually, that we can quickly go to the part that we want to go to. So I'm just going to show you in the style section. So this is found at the top in the ribbon of your document. And what I'm doing now is I'm opening my styles pane. I'm going to move it over to the side so that I can still see the print beyond that. So the access to work heading on this fact sheet, on my styles pane, which is on the right hand side of my screen, it's telling me that that is heading 1. If I move down to the next heading, which says about this fact sheet, my styles pane is telling me I'm now on heading 2. And I can then move down to the next. It's telling me that this is now normal text. So this is the body of my document. If I continue to move down, I'll get to my contents list. And that's telling me that this is now heading 3. So what this would do is we've got a list in numbers because there's a number list here, and we've got the various headings. So what that does for a screen reader user, or for someone who reads Braille, because this would then be transcribed into Braille documents as well. It means that these headings would stand out even if I can't actually see them. So whether I'm listening to it or if I'm reading Braille, fingertips, using Braille to read literature. So I could go to the different sections of this document quickly without having to read the whole thing, just to get to the part I want to get to. So for, as I say, for screen readers and for Braille, using styles it's about formatting your document so that everybody can use that. We had an event maybe a couple of years ago, and we had a lady come in who asked for the booklet that the event was about. It was launching this project and this booklet that came with it. And the lady asked for, could she have a Braille copy? Of course she can. So I'd requested that to be transcribed for her, and for one reason or another, it wasn't available on the day, and it was a big panic, like, oh my goodness, we're RNIB, we can't not have an accessible document for the lady that happened to be our chair at the time. So a colleague said, don't worry, we have a Braille embosser machine, we will run one off for you. So we had this. It wasn't particularly pretty looking, but it was an accessible document. So we thought on the day and gave it to the lady at the event. And she said, it's not formatted. The whole book is one long paragraph. So it was rather embarrassing and not what we wanted to put out. So formatting and using styles is so important for people to be able to navigate around the document.
Heather, just a quick question. Dahlia has asked, how did you find that style settings? Where is it, and how did you make it pop out?
Okay, so what I'll do, I'll close my styles pane. So on my the way things are set up for me. So we're actually in now on my screen. The Zoom screen is covering the top of my ribbon here. So on our setting, we're in the home section. So on your top ribbon under home, over to maybe about about 3/4 of the way across the screen, I have the word styles, and there's different headings above that. If it's not in your home ribbon, it would be in your review ribbon, depending on your own system. There's if you're doing this visually, there's a little arrow box to drop that down and that's brought up a navigation pane for styles. So it is built into Microsoft Word, and it will be either in your home, on your home ribbon, or your review ribbon, which you can't actually see because my the Zoom strip is across the top of it. Does that answer the question okay?
I think so, Heather, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so hopefully that kind of demonstrates the importance of this, because we don't want to be sending something out to someone and they've got to read through an entire, you know, telephone directory just to get to the bit at the end that they want to see. So, okay, so if you had images or pictures on your document, I would say firstly, ask yourself if they're really necessary or if they're just decorative. So I'm not saying to produce loads of plain documents, you know, because that, you know, we want things to look nice. You know, if we're giving out literature, you don't just want an A4 sheet of black and white with nothing on it. You know, we want logos, we want, you know, diagrams, we want pictures. So I'm not saying not to have graphics at all, but, you know, if you're producing something for somebody who, with sight loss, who would, you know, require things to be, you know, formatted differently, ask yourself if the pictures, are they really necessary, or are they just adding, you know, not adding value, just adding another layer of complexity, shall we say, to your document. If you do need them there, for example, we do want logos and things, we need that to be on our literature. So if you do want them to be there, make sure you have what is called alt text enabled on your document. And I'll show you this a little bit later on when I talk about PowerPoint, just because I find it easier to do it at that point. So yeah, alt text is something I'll show you in a minute, and that's there for when you have a picture or an image of some sort that you want to be there, and you know, it really does need to be there. And of course, your best friend, the accessibility checker, that will keep you right. So in our system for the accessibility checker, it's under the review tab. So it's not in the home tab, review, which is somewhere along the middle. I just can't see it because the Zoom strip is over the top of it. So yeah, so we've just looked at the headings of things. We'll talk about alt text in a moment, and please do use the accessibility checker. And the tips that I've just spoken about with Microsoft Word, they also apply to other Microsoft packages. So we'll move on just now to have a look at PowerPoint and email. So I'm going to stop sharing this document, and hopefully I will be able to go back into my PowerPoint presentation. Let's see. If this all works okay.
Yep, that's there. Thanks, Heather.
Oh, that's good. Right, things are working here. So as long as my screen doesn't go blank like it did for my Word document, we're doing fine. So when we use PowerPoint, we do tend to use images, and that's because we want our slides to look nice. Of course we do, and that's fine, as long as we remember to make our presentations accessible as well. So when we use images, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, we need to make sure that the alt text is there, because that will describe what's on the slide. So let me show you here. So we have a PowerPoint slide. I'm going to move to my first slide, because that has an image on it, and that's this here, which is the RNIB. See differently, that is our logo. So right now I'm going to have to somehow move the I don't know how I'm going to move the is there a way, Emma, that I can move my Zoom panel, if you like, to the bottom of our screen rather than the top, because I need to get to what's underneath. So
yeah, it might be best if I share I can share the PowerPoint, if you like.
Okay, that's fine, because I can't see what's under the Zoom thing. So okay, so are you okay to
yeah, just bear with me a second,
yeah.
and I will share that.
Thank
so if you stop sharing, and then I will.
Okay, so I've stopped sharing.
Okay, so if you You tell me what you need me to do.
Yep. Okay then, so in here, yes, so what we're doing, if we go to the review button at the top, yeah, and then over to your left, you have check accessibility, yeah, and then alt text. Right, now what we'll probably need to do actually is move up to the first slide. Can we? Yeah, so if you click on this slide and actually click onto the logo itself. Yep, that's it. Now, if you do the alt text. Okay, so what's popped up here is on the right hand side of our screen, it says alt text, and it is it's telling you that what that picture is actually the RNIB logo. So what you would be doing with your PowerPoint presentation is where you have a picture or an image of some sort on your PowerPoint slides, which is absolutely fine. We do want it to look good. If you have, you would just type into the alt text, you would type in a brief description of what that picture is. So, you know, you don't need to have War and Peace describing every single detail, just to tell someone what is in that picture, because a screen reader would simply tell you that there is an image there, and it wouldn't be able to tell you what it is. So, you know, it's not crucial to know that that image on that screen is the RNIB logo, but you know, as a screen reader user, I might want to know what's in that and have the same experience as everybody else has, you know, so a brief description of what's needed, just to let me know what that is on my screen, so I'm not just left wondering. So I think it's important to say as well that
Hi Heather, we've just lost your I can hear you again now, sorry.
Oh, okay, am I still here? Hi, can you hear me okay, Emma? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so people are saying that they can hear me okay in the chat. So are we back in again? So. Yeah. Okay, so yep, okay, so the messages I'm getting is that people can hear me, so I'll just continue to talk. I don't know if it's just you, Emma, that can't hear me, so I'll just carry on. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue with our video.
Apologies, sorry, I lost my internet connection.
Okay.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We were getting some chat messages, people saying they could hear me. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm just checking that we've still got the slides on the screen. So I think, is this me that's now sharing?
It should be, yeah, if you want to share your screen now.
Yep, okie dokie. Yep. Okay, I think we're yep, I'm sharing my screen. I think we're back on. So, so yeah, just another point on the images on PowerPoint. So, it's important that we don't just rely on images to put forward what we want to tell our audience, because we might need to explain, you know, what's on our slides. So things that we wouldn't have in the accessibility checker because it would be far too detailed. So, for example, you know, you wouldn't necessarily say to your group, here we have a graph that shows you whatever figures for the last, you know, financial year, because if that's a graph and an image, somebody who can't see that isn't going to get that information that they need from that. And you wouldn't necessarily have all that listed in your accessibility checker. So in terms of employability, if you were to say, here you see, an example of what you might say would be, here you can see a list of e-learning options that you could enroll for. well, if you can't see that, you wouldn't see that. So you might, as an alternative way of putting that, you might say, here we have a list of learning options, which include CV building, how to shine at an interview, health and safety in the workplace workshop, or something like that. So you might need to, I suppose what I'm saying is you might need to describe what's in your graphics, whereas the accessibility checker might say it's a graph with whatever, but to actually read out what's on your screen, you would do that, in speech, rather than include that in the accessibility checker. Similar to what I described in Microsoft Word earlier, an Arial font is a good one because it's so clear and doesn't have all the little twiddly curly fancy bits on the end, and not using bold or italics or underline as standard does just make things easier to see. I think a kind of good lesson with PowerPoint, as you'll see today, my slides are fairly limited, so I try to keep my PowerPoint slides to a minimum because you just don't need slides overload. It's just a lot more stuff for people to have to read. So, keeping your slides to a minimum, making them simple and clear and uncluttered. Again, don't make slides too wordy. If there's a lot to read, firstly, you lose the concentration of your audience because they're busy reading what's on your slides. But, in relation to sight loss, it's just a lot more stuff to have to read, and I think it's just really about PowerPoint slides should really just add value to your presentation rather than being your presentation. As with everything else, I say always use your accessibility checker. It will keep you right, very simple to use. It's, in here, it's on review, onto accessibility checker, and that's where you'll get, notification that your PowerPoint slides are fine for people to use. I think I might be able to do accessibility checker. If I check accessibility, yep, on the right hand side of my screen, it tells me here that there's no accessibility issues found and that people with disabilities should not have difficulty reading this presentation. I'm really glad it said that because that could have been rather embarrassing if it didn't tell me that. Okay. One final thing on presentations, if you have someone who needs to use some type of screen reader or some similar type of software, maybe magnification or something, it can be helpful to send the slides out to them in advance because they can then be familiar with the slides rather than trying to read them as you're presenting. Okay, so I'm now going to stop sharing my PowerPoint again, and hopefully this time it should all go well. I'm going to move on to here's one I made earlier, email. So let's see, and I hope this works. So Emma, you should have a rather strange looking.
It's all there, Heather.
It's all there. Good stuff. Oh, we are getting so good at this. so moving on to emails or Outlook as we use here. If we send out an email, we can format it as plain text. So I've got this email here. Now, you would never really send something out like this just because it looks silly. So what I've done when I prepared this is I've written a short message to Emma in a kind of purpley colour, I think it was, and very large size writing. Under that, I have my email signature, which some of it's italic, some of it's in bold. It tells you where I work. Please don't come to visit me because I'm not there. I've highlighted in yellow my telephone contacts, and then there's the blue links that you normally get for things like websites. So there's a lot of different information there. As I say, you would never send an email out looking like that because it does look silly, but it was just to show you how plain text works. So you might have pictures, images of various sorts in your email. So there's a lot of different stuff for someone to process visually. on that, the different colours and the like. So what we might do is to use plain text for this, just to send this email out and just make it easier for somebody to read. So plain text, what it means is it just takes out all the colours, any images, the bold text, and everything will just appear in the same font type, even if you're using some of the nice fancy fonts. Some people have their actual name for the signature and it's written in a nice sort of swirly writing, which is fine, but for somebody with sight loss, it could be harder to actually read what the name says. So while all of these nice decorative things make things look nice, it could be confusing for some people. So I'm going to show you how to do, just change this into a very simple plain text email. So for this, we're using format text, which is up on my top ribbon. And when I go to, if I can remember how to do this format text, over on my right hand side, I have the three little dot things where all the extra bits are. And I'm moving down to message format and onto plain text. And if you watch the email, you'll now see, as I click continue, everything just goes much simpler. So what it's done is it's just got the same message. Hello, Emma. I hope you're having a good day today. Best wishes, Heather. It's taken out all of the colours, the highlighted bits. It's taken out the bold, the italics. It's actually completely taken out my email signature and all that extra guff that you might not really want. And it's just given a very simple version of what that original email was. So plain text, as I said, to do that, it's format text at the top and my little dots. You might have a longer ribbon than I've got, so it might not be under little dots. Message format and plain text. And that has produced a very simple, straightforward email that's somebody's not having to hunt for the message in that to try and find out what I was trying to say. So just kind of thinking, there's a few points I just want to quickly, three key points really to cover with emails. Firstly, if you have in your email, you're going to include in the body of an email, you're going to have, sometimes we have a link to something, so maybe describe something and then just place a link there. It can be helpful to tell people, here is the link to our webpage, for example. It just, allows the person to, lets them know that there is a link there rather than it's something that they've got to look for that they might otherwise miss. If you're adding attachments to your email, it can also help if you mention this in the body of your email, please see attached document for blah, blah, blah. So, let the person know that there is an attachment so that they don't miss that, and just let them know what it is that is attached to the email. Again, it's something that could be missed because it might not be obvious visually, but just let the person know that there's an attachment there. And thirdly, and really, really crucially, attached documents also have to be accessible. So, making sure that your email is accessible isn't the same as making sure the attachment's accessible. So it's two separate tasks, really. So for your attachment, use your accessibility checker to make sure that your attachment is accessible too. And we quite often save documents as, oh, sorry, I've got emails popping up on my screen. So we quite often save documents as PDFs, and I think that's something to be really careful about. So yes, we have accessible PDFs, but some PDFs are not accessible. So if it's maybe like an image only PDF, so that's a bit like you're sending a scanned image of something. That's something we should never use. A scanned image or a scan of a document that's saved as a PDF is really a picture. So there might be writing on it, but once you've scanned it and saved it as a picture, there isn't real text there. It's actually a photograph of writing. So a screen reader wouldn't detect that there was writing on that because it's actually a photograph. I hope that makes sense. Also, if you're magnifying a scanned image, you can get a lot of kind of blurring and pixelating. So I think the kind of golden rule is, if possible, it's send something as a Word document, it's a lot easier to check the accessibility and be sure that what you're sending as your attachment is going to be accessible to your customer as well. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this and hopefully, okay, no, I don't seem to have anything along my, are we still here, Emma? Yeah.
Would you like me to share the PowerPoint?
Could you go back to the PowerPoint? Yeah, I don't seem to have the option for that. So. Lovely. Okay. Okay, thank you. So yeah, right. So moving on to briefly on to print documents. So, you know, hard copy print, you're giving stuff out at an event or you're passing it to a customer, what have you. So if you're producing documents in print, they should be in what is called a clear print format. So that is font size 14. If someone asks for a large print copy of something, that's usually seen as something that's larger than a 16 point, but generally speaking, large print would be, you know, if you ordered something large print, it would generally be in a size 18 point font. So clear print 14. If you're looking at large print, it's 18 plus. So if somebody wants something, wants a document from you and they want it in a larger font size, I would say never just enlarge your original using a photocopier, but always prepare a new document to suit their specific needs. So that way you can make sure that what you're giving them is accessible and it isn't just, you know, as is often done, printed on a larger piece of paper. So the easiest way to make your document into a larger font is just to select all of your text and then increase the font button, you know, to whatever size of font it is the person's looking for. That way you're, you know, giving them a A4 document with large print on it, rather than what we sometimes see. Sometimes people are given an A3 document, so it's a, you know, bigger piece of paper, but it doesn't actually make the writing much bigger. It doesn't seem to, you know, twice the size of paper doesn't make twice the size of print for some reason, and it's also much harder to read a document when it's on a huge piece of paper. So I kind of compare it to maybe like trying to read the Financial Times, and the writing is not very big and you need really long arms to do it. So, you know, if you need to hold your piece of paper closer to your face, or you're using a magnifying glass with it, for example, trying to hold a big piece of paper and do that, it's quite unusable. So, you know, please do standard size paper, just increase the font size rather than increase the paper. Usual rules will apply. A plain font size, Arial is obviously my favourite, and it works well for people because it is so much clearer to see. Avoiding block capitals. It's okay to have capitals in there, or, you know, underline something apart if you want to emphasise it, or bold, but don't just use that as standard. The paper that you print on, you need to consider that when you're giving out print documents. So you want to give something out that's got a kind of a matte, dull finish, because glossy paper, while it might look nice on our literature, it can cause problems with glare, especially if someone's using a magnifier with a light on it. So also to think about your paper is, if you're doing double-sided, you know, printing double-sided on it, make sure it's quality paper or the print's going to bleed through to the other side, and that again is going to make it harder for someone to read. As always, you know, make sure you have a good contrast between the text and paper, as it will make your document much easier to read. I think it's important as well to remember with all of these things that not everyone with sight loss is going to have the same needs. So if you know your, you know, if you know your customer, you know your reader, just ask them what they need, and generally people will be able to give you an indication of what they're looking for. My golden rule, when people say, oh, 18 fonts should be fine, I usually go up to maybe 20, because 18 might be okay for reading a short burst, but if it's a bit more lengthy, let's just make it that little bit clearer. Yeah, so you know, don't be scared to ask somebody what is it you need, because generally speaking, they will know. So, okay, websites and apps. I'm going to go very quickly because I've gone on for a while here. Websites and apps accessibility is a very specialist matter, and it should really be built in from the start. I always say with a building design, you wouldn't build a building and then tear it down to bring in, you know, wheelchair ramps or to put in a lift shaft or something. You would make that part of your design from the off, and absolutely has to be the same with websites and apps. Accessibility needs to be there at day one and not something you try to bring in later when it's much more difficult and much more costly. So that there's guidelines and legal requirements around websites and apps. So please do get expert advice for this. And could we move on to the next slide, please, Emma? Thank you. Okay, so finishing up. So we've covered quite a lot today. Some of it's worked well, some of it we've had hiccups, but we've got through it. And I hope it has been helpful. And I just wondered if there's anything anybody wants to pop into the chats facility to give their thoughts around accessibility and what, you know, what we need to all be doing to make sure things are accessible for our customers. And so I suppose that as prompts, I might say, you know, have you previously given much thought to accessibility, and, you know, whether the stuff you're sending out to people is accessible? And is it maybe something that your organisation teaches you about, or something that hasn't really been considered? And I suppose the big question is that, you know, the title of today's talk is, you know, am I creating barriers for people with sight loss? You know, we're sending things out thinking it's going to be useful and helpful, but is that actually in itself what we're sending out? Is it causing a barrier for people? And really just wondered if anyone wants to comment on anything that they might do differently now that we've been thinking more.
If we just let people have a moment to think. I personally just wanted to say that this has been really insightful, and actually a lot of us out there probably have a level of technological ability, but don't necessarily use all the functions in that technology because we don't necessarily need it ourselves. So having that demonstration has been really helpful for opening my eyes to how I can make things more accessible. We have Deborah in the chat who's just said, I've just started working with a gentleman, with a man who's recently lost his sight. This is really informative for me to help me working with him going forwards. And you've mentioned issues that I would not have even thought of. So thank you. Thanks, Deborah. And also Nigel has said, it has certainly given me a different approach for my future presentation design and letters. Yeah, I can concur with that, especially when it came to having the different texts separated so that it's not all read out as one piece, so that it helps someone with sight issues to break down a document. That was really interesting.
Yeah, that's it. I think absolutely it's something that we don't think about, you know. And as I say, the lady at our event, my colleague produced this, very quickly produced this document, and she said it is one long paragraph, and it was like pages and pages of stuff for her to get to the part that she wanted to. It was very frustrating, and people understandably, you know, there's a lot of anxiety if you just can't read and be involved in the way that other people are. So
yeah, and we've got a few more. So we have Dahlia, who's just said, thank you very much. I've learned some very useful tips for my job bulletin. And Katie Wilkinson has said, we've got a learner starting who uses a computer to read documents. So it's given us lots of things to change and think about. Very informative.
Yeah. I think, you know, I hope that what's come from today shows that the accessibility checker, it's play around with it. You know, as I said at the beginning, look at some documents that you've produced and use your accessibility check and see if, yeah, that was accessible to people, or, you know, it'll help you to fix, you know, the bits that aren't accessible. And I just wondered if we can just go on to the last slide, Emma. It's got the helpline details on it. So yeah, you know, please do, if you need even, you know, to recap on anything we've talked about today. I know that there's quite a lot involved, and to remember where all the bits are and things. You know, contact our helpline either, you know, on the phone number 0303 123 9999 or email helpline@rnib.org.uk. Either way, you know, they can get you the information you need so that you can you know, make sure that your documents and the information that you're sending out is accessible to customers with sight loss. Anyone who quickly noted down my telephone number when I had my Outlook account up, yep, by all means, I won't give it out and invite lots of queries. Please go to the helpline. But you know, it's we're only too happy to help make sure that people are able to incorporate this into their work.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Heather, for your time today. And also thank you all for attending. We will be, what I'm going to do is just end the recording there. And thank you all very much for today.